Hello, and welcome back to another Reddit League show. We're in our second show of the season now, covering weeks 4 to 6 and their events, as well as, of course, taking a look forward to weeks 7 and 9. And today I am joined on one hand by MrSwissSnow. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks. I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. And on the other hand, by Bastel. How are you doing?
Hi, Calamity, and thank you for inviting me.
You're
I'm
welcome.
fine.
Let's first talk about Reddit League NXT. And yeah, looking at the table, we're still sort of seeing the after effects of Mongolia a little bit in there. Bananoki is still leading the table by quite some margin. He's 10,000 points ahead of Blitva. I've actually never had to pronounce the name, so if you're listening, please tell me. And Boris in third place, he's made up a couple of positions in recent times, despite his fairly weaker Mongolia performance. And yeah, but behind him, it's still very, very close between third and I guess even down to like 11th place. Still everything can happen and people can make up those points. Some great performances all throughout, though. There's a lot of people this season in Reddit League Next who are still very good players, even if they don't show up every week. And yeah, it's looking to be exciting as the season finishes up. Yeah, currently looking like it'll be 3 people who get the order promotion. I might still change that looking at next season. But if saying this now, if I change it, I might allow more people to get automatically promoted. But we'll see. We'll see. The guarantee will be 3 people. So try to do your best to make it into that third spot. And yeah, sure. Let's move over to Division 5. Let's get straight into Division 5B. And we'll start. We've got some nice new graphics this week. Varum also made some for our respective picks that we'd like to talk about. So why don't you start talking us through your picks for Division 5B for weeks 4 to 6?
Yes. So in week 4, we traveled to Ecuador, and I think Ecuador proved to be like a very, very tough challenge for a lot of players. Even for myself, but let's see. So my pick for week 4 in Division 4 5B is Trebliha versus Bombadil. And it's a very interesting battle because Trebliha started the season like on a low point. And this week, he manages to, or I don't know if he or she,
She in this case.
She, okay. So she gets the win, and it's very interesting because it's like the third lowest score of the division. But still, I mean, if you get lucky, you get lucky. It's in the game, and here Treblinka gets lucky, and she gets a crucial win against Bombadil, and for now she stays out of trouble, having 2 more points than Penguin, who's in the relegation playoff spot. And yeah, Bombadil probably like waited for Maryland, and yeah, but Ecuador, it also was I think it was quite a difficult seed, like 25 king. I don't know if anyone 25 king did, but it was quite difficult. So yeah, okay. And moving forward in week 5, yeah, we traveled to Maryland, and in Division 5B in Maryland, Penguin faced with Oxide, and for Penguin, like the season started really also on a low point, but he got also unlucky, like at least 2 or 3 times. So he got like 3 losses in a row, maybe, and here he gets his first win in the season. No, yeah, 4 losses, and here he gets his first win after some unlucky matchups. But it's a very, very tough win, and a well-deserved win, because like Penguin like beating Oxide, who has the highest score by far in the division, if we are not counting Greasy on the second place. Like Oxide has more than 10k points, more than the player with the third highest score. So for Penguin, I think it's like a really great achievement, and he shows that he can beat anyone if he gets a seed that he likes or a map that he likes. And yeah, great performance by Penguin. And also for Aphelox seed, I mean, if anyone, I think he can say that he got really unlucky because by having more than 140k points, I mean, it's like even in Division 4 or 3 or 2, like having more than 140k points is really impressive. So I think Aphelox seed will fight for one of the promotion spots for sure. And yeah, finally we reached the last week, and last week was the SK map, and like I think if someone read through the Discord conversations, like they could see that that most players was complaining about the SK map, and I had fun. I have to say I had fun because at least I could read some things, unlike in Mongolia, which was problematic. But in SK at least there was some text sometimes that you could read the city names and you can find out the information. But yeah, it like 25k probably like maybe one or two players from every seed in their own seed was able to 25k.
Mostly Anna.
And yeah, mostly Anna, exactly. I mean, like I think Anna probably, if we add up all the scores, like I think Anna could have beaten like anyone in any seed, probably not all, but almost. And yeah, Aphelox seed bounces back. Like he lost to Penguin, and now he beats the leader of the division, Secator, and yeah, it's a really important win, and we will see later the leaderboard. So he keeps his hopes alive, and also he helps the others because with this lost Secator, at least the gap between Secator and the other players in the division is not that much. So yeah, it's a great win and also great performance because I think like above 20k in South Korea, also in a quite difficult seed is nothing less than uploadable.
Yeah, for sure. And moving to my picks for these 3 weeks, for week 4 in Division 5B's Ecuador, I picked out the match between Damir and Greasy, two players that have performed very well before and both putting in pretty great scores. I think Damir's was the second highest of the division, and Greasy also still definitely up there, I think in 4th. So getting a bonus point as well, even in his loss. And both had pretty decent starts to the season. Just Darmir falling off a little bit in week 6 later by not playing his game, which unfortunately hasn't helped him, as we'll see in the table later. Has also previously been known to maybe not be the most aware of when deadlines are, or but we'll hope he will keep that as his only missed leg this season. In week 5, Greasy straight away coming back from that unfortunate loss with a perfect 25k in Maryland against Mr. Fish, who has got to be slightly disappointed with that score. Just 15,000 points in Maryland, which is a fairly easy state to play. Admittedly, the Division 5 seats seem to have been a bit on the harder side, as even through Division 5A as well, a lot of the scores were fairly low comparatively for a US state like that, which just makes those 25Ks even more impressive. We've got Bombadil and Edikmi as well for Division 5B in those Maryland maps. And Mr. Fish, again, same scenario here, though, coming straight back with a win in South Korea against Forzi, which, looking at the table, as we will do in a bit, could also be a pretty crucial game for him, as it kind of pulls Forzi back from those promotion spots more so into his range, as we look at the table now, which means that it's all getting a little bit closer. You mentioned the Secateur match as well. A lot of players higher up in the table lost their South Korea match, which, pulls the table a bit more together and means that I think everything's still possible in here. Even Kuker's in last place with 5 points. is, fairly decent points haul for someone in last place. Notably as well with only one win, so 2 of those 5 points coming from bonus points, decent total score as well. So he's still definitely got a decent shot at making his way out of there as well.
Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned earlier, I like to highlight how it's a very like a strange, if you look at the leaderboard, that Greasy and Alphaloxid has like a very amazing total score by with 139k and 148k, but they are only at third and fourth place. So it's not only the total score, you have to perform well into certain matchup and win those matchups. We had Hickman and Secator so far leading the Division 4B, but I think that maybe in the following 3 weeks this can change anytime.
Yeah, a lot of that total score, admittedly, for those two coming from Mongolia, where Upflock seed was like 10k ahead of fourth place on that seed. And Greasy in second place there, also 5k ahead of that. Mr. Fish the third in that group, also 5k ahead of fourth. But of course, that still means some of that overall score advantage is still coming from other seeds. So yeah, of course, great performances from them so far. As we'll look at the future weeks. So who have you picked out for weeks 7 to 9?
So for week 7, I picked out Bombadil versus Penguin, and I think it's I'm really curious how Penguin performs, because he's in the 10th place and having 6 points and with the same amount of points as Ted Z, and also like 2 points off of 9th place from the same place. Like he really has to fight for this, and really needs like to win at least, I think, maybe even 3 or 4 matches from the last 6 matches. Or 5, and also Bombadil is in the middle of the pack, but I think he's 4 points off of promotion playoff spots, and every win counts. So it's like both of them really need a win from different reasons, but anything can happen. I think looking at the total scores also, it's like, Bombadil has 10k more points than Penguin, but it's still, I mean, on a worldwide map, if they get a remote location anywhere in the world, that can decide the matchup. And the next week, like week 8, is North America, and I chose the match between Secator and Hedikmin, the French derby, and it's like first place versus second place, and I'm really excited to see how they perform on a foreign soil, because it's North America, and if they can get like remote Canada location or remote Mexico location, that could be really, really exciting. So let's see how they perform, and how are their skills in North America. And also in total score, and so far in the matchups, and in like almost every seed, they perform relatively the same. I mean, if I remember correctly, Secator performed better in Mongolia, but it's relatively the same. And I think this may be one of the biggest factors, most important factors to decide which one of them will be able to get the automatic promotion spot.
Mm-hmm.
And for week 9 in Eswatini, I chose Ted Z versus Mr. Fish for an apparent reason, because Ted Z is fighting to stay up, to stay in Division 4B, and Mr. Fish, just as Bombadil, is fighting to get to the promotion player spot, but also not to fall down. Maybe that's probably a bigger problem for him, because he's like 3 points to the 10th place, and anything can happen. And also like on a map like Eswatini, where you can get a straight road with no information, or just a remote location in like one of the bigger cities, like some road where you don't get any information. I think one of them will surely win this. I will be very surprised with a draw. And whoever wins this, that could be, if Tedzi loses this, that might be his chances gone to avoid relegation. But if Mr. Fish loses this, he might just stay in somewhere in the middle of the table, or he might just start to get nervous that he might fall down in the order and have to fight for his life.
Yeah, definitely. And you got to remember as well, there's still 2 weeks before that. So who knows what will happen in those two. They might be in a completely different position by then. But yeah, as it is currently, as you said, it could be a bit of a relegation battle for the two of them. As we move over to my picks, where I picked for week 7, Edikmi against Abflugseed. Of course, first against fourth in the table. Pretty important matchup for both of them. 5 points between them at the moment. And I think if Edikmi can manage to somehow pull out a win on that map, I think that really, really strengthens his chances of an automatic promotion spot. It would put him at least, it will put quite a lot of distance between him and Abflugseed at least. Of course, a few of the other players behind there still want to, be in that conversation as well. But if he if he loses this, then again it all gets so much closer again. It will probably be at most 3 points between fourth and first at that scenario. So it could be very very relevant for the promotion battle come the end of the season. In week 8, I have gone for the opposite side of the table. Treblinka against Teds, currently 9th and 11th, so kind of a similar situation as you had with Mr. Fish and Teds just earlier, just Treblinka with 1 point less than Mr. Fish does have in this current situation. Treblinka also has been struggling quite a bit just in terms of overall score. She has the lowest of the division, not super far behind, about 5,000 points behind Teds, who has the second lowest, if we exclude Damir, who missed last week, obviously, so of course his total score is quite a bit lower. Actually still above Treblinka's though. So she, I think, would really like a win in this particular matchup, because that would just give her a lot more room at the bottom there, and would allow her to maybe, if she's still got some games against the promotion favorites to go, then, have a bit less pressure in those. Whereas for week 9, I've chosen Cougars against Penguin, kind of pretty much the exact same scenario as Treblinka and Teds, both fighting against relegation down there in the table. Cougars in 12th and last place currently, still with 5 points, but in terms of total score, actually not doing too badly. 119,000 points means he is ahead of Penguin, Teds, Treblinka, and even Forzy, who's in 5th place, purely based on that. So I think he can definitely put up a decent score as well. And Eswatini, I'm pretty sure, is going to be a matchup that will be decided in about 80% of cases by who practiced more and who just put more time into getting to know Eswatini landscape in most scenarios, probably, because as I have been told, I wouldn't know, but as I have been told, it is a pretty region guessable country. So if you do have some rounds where there's just no information for you to find, then having a bit of landscape knowledge could make the difference between the winners and the losers in that particular week. So
yeah, I mean, you have to put in some time to learn those regional clues, but yeah.
All right, then let's move on to Division 5A and your picks for week 4 to 6.
Okay, so for week 4, I went with Anonono versus Lagage, and also another French derby. What a surprise! But it's also 2 players who are amongst the favorites to win the division. And they face up on a very difficult seed in Ecuador. I mean, in this Division 5 seed, you had one of the highest scores with something like 23.5k, and no one get above 24k. So at least it had 1 or 2 rounds where there was zero information. So I think both scores are really impressive, but Anono gets the win and gets the 3 points, and Lagage had to settle with for 1 point, which is also something. And yeah, like both of them are in the top 5, and no is remained in the top spot, and Luggage is only like 2 points off the top, so it's a very important match for both of them. And for week 5, I went with Danny J versus no again, because like the performance of no is crucial also for other players, because he's the leader. And in Maryland, I would say, yeah, like it wasn't an easy seed, but also like a few players managed to get the 25k. I mean, maybe most players are from Division 1 or 2, but still. And Danny G gets, it's not a lucky win, but looking at the total score we will see later, he has the lowest total score out of all from the top 5 of the division. And no gets here a loss with no bonus point. So it's a great win for Danny J, and he remains in the fight for the promotion spot. And lastly, we have South Korea. For week 6, I chose Fondorlat. I think the only Hungarian player in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Versus Danny J again. And here, Danny J doesn't get a lucky win, but they both got a draw out of this. And I think it's a very important draw for both of them. And Fondorlat is only 3 points off the top. And yeah, Danny J is fighting for the promotion playoff spots, both of them. And also in South Korea, it's not a bad score at all. I think it's for Division 4, the seed was, I think, relatively hard. Only a few players managed to 25k. So yeah, I think a draw here is relatively fair, and helps to both of them that remain in the top 5.
Absolutely. And moving over to my picks, I, for week 4 in Ecuador, picked GameFab against Danny J. So we'll talk about Danny J in all of his matches these previous 3 weeks. Yeah, he pulled out a pretty nice win there, as you've already mentioned. It was a fairly difficult seed, although in an interesting difficulty where the general area for most locations was fairly clear, while the exact narrowing it down of the right road was pretty difficult. And yeah, meant that everything was fairly close together, but just like 1,500 points lower than you'd normally see on a map like this. But yeah, strong win for him. And after he had a lot of trouble last season in Division 4 in his debut season, he's just shown that, maybe he wasn't quite ready for Division 4 yet, but in Division 5, he can fight amongst the better players. As you said, maybe not the highest overall score, but still some decent showings from him so far. For week 5 in Maryland, I went with Lajej against the already red-carded Pikatos, but in this case, because of the 25k of Lajej, which is the only thing that actually makes a difference if you're playing against a red-carded player. Otherwise, if you score 1 point, if you score 24,999, no difference. But getting that bonus points out of your red card matchup is quite nice to have, and also kind of means that there's a little bit of a difference there between everyone else playing their red carded matchup and just getting those 3 points. He gets those 4 and is the only player of Division 5A who came even close to the 25k on that map. Fondorlat, the second best score with 22.7k, quite far away from that. And then in week 6, we've got GameFab against Laban Greb, with the only second win of the season so far for GameFab, but with a great score for him. 23.2k is one of the best scores in the division. It is actually, in fact, the best score of the division, about 30 points ahead of Anonono. And yeah, just a great game from him. Good game from Laban Greb as well, for sure, and does collect a bonus point for it. But yeah, it does mean that both of them will now be fairly close to each other in the table, kind of in that fight against relegation. But looking at that table, both now in a pretty all right position, it seems, with a bit of a gap down 3 points to Soundbite and Clemens. Well, 3 points down to Soundbite, 5 points down to Clemens from GameFab, who's got himself a little bit of a buffer there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think still, like looking at the score of Setalin and Danny J, one might say that they had some lucky matchups, but I think they used their chances really well, and they took their opportunities, and now they are on second and sixth place, and also like Setalin is 3 points from third place, and I think with 1 or 2 good seeds he can get there. But the three Frenchmen, I think, has a great chance actually to take this division, and maybe all 3 of them might promote. That would be quite funny actually, but it can happen.
Yeah, we do have, as we saw before, Erikmi and Secateur on top of Division 5B as well, with Forzi in 5th. So technically, it's possible that we get 5 French players promoting out of Division 5, which would be fun to see. But let's not speak too soon. There's a couple of people who have something against that idea. And yeah, we'll see who those people are as we look towards weeks 7 and 9, 7 to 9, I guess. And well, what did you pick out for those?
Yeah, for week 7, I went with Lagage versus Fondorlat, and I think both for Fondorlat and Lagage, this is very important matchup. So they are separated by only 1 point in the division, and also by only something like a 2k point difference. And on a worldwide map, anything can happen, and we'll see what they get. Probably Fondorlat hopes that there won't be any French location, but we'll see. And it's also, I think it might, if it's an easy draw, I can see both of them get a perfect score, but who knows? Yeah, we'll see. For week 8, Lagage again. I think one of the players who will have some busy weeks in the upcoming weeks will face Laban Greb, who is on the 8th place of the division, but he has a really respectable total score with 123k, and I'm not sure if he wants to look ahead of him, and he thinks that he can have a chance of fighting for promotion spots, or he's like it's better to stay safe and just look down, because it's only 4 points that Soundbite is off of him, and Soundbite, yeah, he's also a formidable player, so I think Laban Grave will want to at least stay in the division, and he has all the chances in North America. And lastly, for week 9 in Eswatini, Soundbite is playing against Clemens Kerchik. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, it's quite tricky. And yeah, so they are on the last play. If you don't count Pikatos, because Pikatos got a red card, and if you don't count Pikatos, that they are on 10th and 11th place. And like both of them really need a win. I think whoever gets this win in Eswatini, if it's not a draw, then basically that might be a ticket out of relegation playoff spots. But it also might not be, because Soundbite needs at least 3 points to get out of this place, and Clemens Kerchik even more than that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they both need a lot of points. So I think it's probably safe to assume, even if there are still 5 weeks to play, that whoever out of the two loses that game is probably getting relegated. It's going to be difficult for them to make it out of those relegation zones unless they pick up a win here. I picked for week 7 to 9. Well, I'm starting with Clemens. avoiding to pronounce his last name, against Laban Greb, which is another game, well, down there in the relegation near zone, at least. Laban in 8th place on 8 points so far. And that's kind of, as it appears to be, kind of the start of an easier, in quotation marks, run of games for Clemens, where after only 2 points out of the first 6 games, he really needs to pick up points soon if he wants to stay in the division. And, well, what better place to start with than here? As we go into week 8, North America, we've got Danny J. I just can't stop talking about him, apparently, against Corgi. They're not too far apart in terms of total score, I guess, a few thousand points between them. But I think they're generally of fairly equal skill level, at least, close to each other. And I think that is probably Corgi's best chance of, if he still wants to have any shot at making towards the promotion spots, fighting against a direct contender for those who's 6 points ahead of him currently. He needs to win that game. Of course, if his target is just to somewhat stay in the middle of the table and be far enough away from the relegation danger to avoid that, even then, a win is obviously crucial for any point. But yeah, week 9, Eswatini. Then we're actually talking about candidates for promotion with Cephalin against Antoine Pignard. Currently 6th in Cephalin and 3rd in Antoine. Both of them, again, fairly close together, 3 points separating the two of them. And just a very interesting game. I know Cephalin practices quite a bit usually. Has been known to be quite disappointed about some of the performances or some of the seeds afterwards. But yeah, I think that could be a fairly close and decisive game looking at the promotion spots as well going forward. And with that, we will move over to Division 4B and your picks from week 4 to 6.
Yeah, for week 4, I went with the match between Geoguessr and Clamou. And for Geoguessr, he started the season in Ireland with a loss. That was unlucky because he only missed 1 round. But after that, he had 3 wins in a row. And with these Ecuador wins, I think after week 4, he was something like the top 4 or top 5. And a 24.3 K score is a really good score in this seed. And he gets his 3 points. And also he shows that he's very consistent. And also in last season in Division 5A, I think, he showed that he's a really consistent player with scoring above 20K almost every time. And now in Division 4B, he's performing at the same level. And I'm really excited to see how he goes on. And also with Clamou, it's only his first loss of the season after a draw and 2 wins. And Clamou is also one of the strongest players, but also I think it's quite unfair to say one of the strongest because like all of the players in this division, also in Division 4A, is very, very great players who had at least 1 or 2 great matchups so far and great scores. And Clamou is still in the top 5 after this week, and we'll see that after this loss, he manages to bounce back. So for week 5, I went with Oli versus Zotomo. And Zotomo looked like he's not really in the picture of fighting for promotion. But he showed in Maryland and the week before, Maryland and the week before this in Ecuador, that he can beat anyone if he gets a seed that he manages to perform well on. And in this week, he manages to beat Oli, maybe somewhat in his home turf. If I remember correctly, he's like somewhat American, or maybe not. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure you're thinking of the right person there. But Yeah,
Oh,
Ollie is German. I don't know if he's got any American relatives or anything, but if he's watching, he can let us know.
Oh yeah. I meant Zotomo actually. Like, he's somewhat
Zotomo.
American.
Yeah. Zotomo is American. Yes, I was maybe only half paying attention.
Yeah, okay, because I was looking at the scores and seeing that like all Americans performed really well in Maryland, but only the Americans. Like Zotomo had the third high score with his 24.3K, and the first and second high score belonged to Solar Sensei and Carp. So basically, the Americans had a great week in their home field. So Zotomo gets his 6 points, and with that, he shows that he's here to fight. And for week 6 in South Korea, I went with the newcomer Varum matchup versus Solar Sensei. And this week it was one of the favorite maps, or I think probably the favorite map of the whole season for Varum. And he shows that why that is, with a perfect score, actually the only perfect score in the division. And although it's a draw, he gets 3 points, and also Solar Sensei gets 2 points, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he gets 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also, Solar Sensei, like, got some unlucky matchups and some losses, but now he's in the middle of the table, as we will see. And he's one of the best and most consistent players throughout the whole Reddit League.
Yeah, it's definitely some interesting games there. For my picks, I will start with Varum against Geoguessr. Very close game in Ecuador. Both of them around that 23k mark. Not particularly amazing, not particularly bad. Just kind of middle of the pack scores from both of them, but the closest Ecuador match of this division. And also both of them in a fairly similar situation in the table, kind of both fighting for those promotion playoff spots, perhaps, as the automatic promotion spot will be difficult to take, as we'll see in a bit. But yeah, decent performance from Varum, just a little bit too much for Geoguessr, just outside of the draw range as well. So unfortunate for him, and also no bonus point for that as well, which is just adds to the misfortune there. In week 5 in Maryland, I have chosen the only 2 players who 25k'd that seed out of Division 4B. There was one more 25k, actually 2 more 25ks in Division 5, 4A as well. But here, Solar Sensei and Carp, both Americans, of course, doing very well on their home turf, getting those 25ks in. Also, both just generally very, very strong players on sort of pinpointable maps that have plenty of information available, which they've shown again here. And then for week 6, Axel against Geoguessr, one of 3 draws in South Korea. South Korea actually the 4 seed, by far the easiest, it seems, out of all of the divisions, even if Division 2 had an easy seed in a different manner. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, very, very close game between the 2 of them. Interestingly, a bonus point for Geoguessr, but not for Axel. That cutoff of 6th and 7th place just between the 2 of them. So 2 points for the Frenchman and just 1 point for the Norwegian, which, looking at the table, means that we do still have a very, very close division overall. 6 points from 1st down to 10th. Zotomo with a little bit of a gap then. But yeah, as you said before as well, Zotomo has impressed me this season. I kind of thought he would just roll over and die, as the saying goes, and not get much of any points at all. But having picked up 2 wins is pretty impressive and a good showing for him. And yeah, rien de rien, bit unfortunate so far. Lowest overall score as well, just at the end of that table there with only 2 points. Already 7 points behind the relegation playoff spot with 5 games to go. I can't really see how he could make his way out of there. He'd need a real turnaround to his season and start picking up points right now. But even then, it'll be difficult to make it out of that. Well, at the other end of the table, Carp is just rolling the division at the moment. His win-draw-loss ratio actually doesn't look too good, but his overall score, of course, almost 10,000 points ahead of anyone else.
Yeah, maybe he even has the highest total score of all divisions, or I'm not sure about that, but one of the highest, right?
Yeah, I think it might actually be the highest, but you can keep talking. I'll check in the meantime.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Karp probably one of the players that impressed me the most this season. I mean, I already knew that he's a formidable opponent and very great player in many different maps and playstyles. But yeah, like practicing all week for Mongolia and getting that almost 25k, and after that, even when it seemed like that he doesn't really have time to practice for South Korea, he easily draws me. So yeah, like amazing performances all around. And also, as you spoken about Rion, yeah, he might start that point picking with me. We'll see. I mean, I think he has all the chances because I'm very capable of losing on an easy seed. So we'll see what happens. And yeah, I think looking at the total scores, we can see that later we will talk about Division 4A, but in our division, the scores are very close to each other, so it's a very, very packed field. And also, like the points is like 2 points here and there, but I think it's still anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did check Carp does have the highest total score out of everyone. Of course, I can't really compare overall scores too well across divisions. D4 definitely had the easiest seats so far, but even out of D4, he definitely has the highest total score. As we will look forward to your picks from weeks 7 to 9 in Division 4B.
Okay, so for week 7, I've chosen Clamu versus Solar Sensei. I think it's a very important matchup for both of them. For Clamu, it's for fighting for first place because he's only 1 point of Carp. And for Solar Sensei, it's also fighting for promotion spots. He's a bit further behind the table. He's 4 points of third place from Varum. But with a win, and if he also beats Clemu, that means that he gains at least 3 points to him, and yeah, that could be a deciding factor in the end. And I think Solar Sensei is easily capable of doing that. So even though Clemu is on second place and Solar Sensei only 6th place so far, for me, Solar Sensei is the favorite, but I think Clem is a really great player, and a draw, I think, wouldn't be surprising at all. So for week 8, I went with Geoguessr once again versus Varum once again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this matchup. Looks promising. I think so. On North America, I don't know how familiar North America is for them, especially for Varum, who is a newcomer. I know that Geoguessr is relatively good at North America, but it also depends on the region. But Varum, I don't really know his preferences, and we'll see. I think it's like a very equal matchup. Their skill levels and the scores so far indicate that yeah, it will be a very tight seed. And lastly, I couldn't resist the temptation to choose for Eswatini Jake Lyons versus myself. And yeah, I have to say that I was really hopeful, even in the beginning of the season, before you drew the divisions, that I will get into the same division as Jake Lyons. So at least I can say that, okay, I might have not made it into the top 3, and I lost out on promotion playoff spot, but at least I beat Jake. And that's like, okay, one might say that's something like very like pity thing to aim, but yeah, for me, I was following Jake and his YouTube videos for a long time, and yeah, it's a great chance to play against him, and I hope that like both of us get a perfect score, 25k, and that would be amazing. But we'll see, and that will be very exciting. I will be practicing for Eswatini probably the most. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, good luck with that. Knowing Jake, he's not getting a 25k in Eswatini. I don't think you have to worry about that. But I hope it'll be a close and exciting game for sure. And yeah, my picks for these 3 weeks, I start out with Ollie against Jack in week 7. Both kind of, I mean, they're in 4th and 9th in the table, but they're still very close together, just 3 points separating the two of them. And I think in terms of skill level, they are pretty similar to each other. I think both kind of similar skill sets as well. So I look forward to how this one goes for the two of them. Both kind of don't strike me as world map players in general, so that could be pretty interesting to see. Also, of course, very interesting for the situation in the table, as the center of that division is fairly closely grouped together. For week 8, of course, North America. Pick 2 North Americans, Solar against Zotomo. In a map like North America, I think Zotomo actually has a little bit of a chance. If it was something like Maryland, if it was a country or a smaller, just anything smaller, I think Solar Sensei wins like probably 9.9 times out of 10. But with North America, I think there's definitely some potential there for locations that will just prove a little more difficult for Solar Sensei, and maybe have a little bit of luck on the side of Sotomo, maybe go in the right direction, maybe just having some prior knowledge of places that Solar Sensei might not be too familiar with. I think he has a little bit of a chance there. I don't think there's too many more maps where he's got a great chance of picking up points. So if he wants to make it out of that relegation zone, I think he should at least aim to pick up 1 point here against Solar Sensei. Even if Solar Sensei puts in a great performance, I think getting at least a bonus point should be a good target here. And for week 9, Eswatini, of course, who could I pick other than first against second? Carp so far. Fantastic season from him. However, the problem with Carp is that so far always in Reddit League, he started out incredibly well and has then dropped off towards the end of the season. So he'll be hoping to finally get rid of that curse and keep going and make it all the way to that automatic promotion spot. But yeah, the matchup against Clemu will be crucial. He's right on his heels, just 1 point behind him in the table. Division 4 is tough to get out of in that automatic promotion spot. It is just 1. Of course, even if you end up in 2nd or 3rd, you still have a chance for a best of 3 promotion decider. But of course, everyone would prefer to just go up straight away without having to play those extra games in a high pressure situation. Then let's move over to the other side of Division 4 with your picks for week 4 to week 6 in Division 4A.
Okay, so week 4, I've chosen the match between Alfie and Veikolok, and it's one of those matches that you needed to have some luck, and Veikolok had some luck because he faced Alfie, and the point difference was only 356, but it's worth mentioning that they had the lowest and the second lowest score in the division, and Veikolok manages to get that 3 points. So good for him, because he's on 6 points. And in the case of Veikolok, in the last season, I remember that I think at least what I've heard from the Reddit League shows, he was something like of an underdog, and still he managed to promote and got some great wins here and there. And now he also probably is an underdog because he's on quite down on the table, but I think he can still get up, and I think like he's one of the players that can do like anything, anytime. He can get a win from out of nothing, and you don't even expect that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how he will perform in the rest of the season. Now for week 5 in Maryland, I went with Bicat versus Morica. I think Morica maybe. Yeah, Bicat gets a win by only 157 point, and but is also the 4th lowest score. So again, like at least after some great performances, after some 25Ks, it's worth mentioning that Bicat, I think, yeah, he was the only player who got 2 25Ks in week 1 and 2, and no, yeah, I think in Ireland, and after that in Mongolia, maybe. Yeah, and after those great performances, he really deserved some luck, and yeah, he got his 4th win. It is not 4th, yeah, the 4th win, yes, and yeah, he's on the top of the table, and that's an amazing performance. But also Morica, being a newcomer and getting so close and having so many great performances, I mean, well done to him. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see if Morica manages to get one of the top 3 spots. And for week 6, I went with Sheldon Wong versus Danny Bonds. And yeah, Danny Bonds finally gets a win, and that's a very important win for him, because it's a very small margin, and only the 2nd win of Danny Bonds in the season so far, and it's also a very crucial win because he finally like gets out of those danger zone and gets like a little gap to Wakelock, and also for Sheldon, it's a great score, and he got really unlucky with losing here, but he got I think, if I remember correctly, 1 point for his efforts, and that's well deserved. And yeah, Danny Blondes is one of those players that I was really impressed with last season, and I think this season he also started quite slowly, but he will pick it up from here, and I think he's one of those players that all the players in this division have to look out for, because he can climb up the table, and yeah, at the end of the season, he might be in the top 5. We'll see. Sheldon Wong is still one of the great players in right now, waiting for promotion, and yeah, one of the players who has the highest score in the division.
Yeah, and it took Danny Blonde so many seasons. He spent so many seasons in Division 5. It's no wonder he's taken a bit of time getting used to Division 4. But yeah, as you said, good performances so far. My picks for weeks 4 to 6 were a very close game between Sepp Kirst and Sheldon Wong in Ecuador, where Sepp Kirst put in a fantastic performance, the highest score of the division. Sheldon, unfortunately for him, I talked about the closest loss of Division 4B earlier. This is the closest loss of Division 4 in general, just 120 points separating them. Of course, Sheldon still picks up a bonus point easily with the 2nd highest score of the division, but a little bit unfortunate there in that matchup, just coming up against a little bit of a stronger performance there from Sepp Kirst. In Maryland, we had a pretty important game in the relegation fight, with Wakelock going up against Seppo, who is struggling quite heavily this season. In terms of total score, he's still amongst the bottom 3, but he's not like super far behind, but just there's no points have come off it yet. And unfortunately, that didn't change in Maryland, as Wakelock picks up just over 20,000 points, almost 3,000 points more than Seppo, and puts himself at least into the relegation playoff spot for the moment. And in week 6, South Korea, we had yet another 25k from Biquet, the 3rd one of the season after 6 games. Very impressive stuff from him. If I'm not misremembering, he just got promoted last season into Division 4. And it looks like he does not want to stay here for any longer than 1 season, as he is trying to immediately go through to his next direct promotion. Seppo, a bit unfortunate there. Actually, a pretty decent score from him. But as far as I remember, let me just quickly check. Yep, the 7th highest, which again meant no point for him. It just keeps on not going his way, unfortunately. As we'll look at the table and see his position there, still 0 points. Very unfortunate start, or first half of the season, pretty much for him there. And yeah, overall the table, it's kind of a little bit spread out with all the bonus points Biquet has gathered from his various 25Ks. But I still think everything's pretty much possible. I'm going to say down to 6th place are the people who are still fighting for promotion. If everything goes absolutely perfect for the likes of Danny Blondes or Antoine Pilot, still not over for them either. But I think realistically, anywhere from Biquet to Dromi is the fight for promotion, and then Seppo is going to struggle to get out of those relegation spots, and then it's probably Danny Blondes to Alfie to kind of stay out of those remaining 2 open relegation and that relegation playoff spot.
Yeah, I have to mention that like Division 4A is incredibly close. The players are very close to each other in terms of total points. Like 6 players has a total score above 140k, and it's really impressive. Like this proves that like before the season, most players, even myself, like we were expecting that Division 4B will be like a tougher battle in there and probably higher total scores, but they proved us wrong, and it's very really great field. And yeah, I mean, I think Seppo got really lucky so far. Really unlucky, sorry. If you look at the scores, like Veikalok has almost 9k less points than Seppo and still has 6 more points. So that could be quite annoying fact for Seppo. But I really believe that yeah, they will manage to get at least 1 win in the season, because that could easily happen. And also for fighting for promotion, I think anything can happen. And I'm not sure. I'm thinking about right now. It's very interesting that I'm not sure if I ever seen someone like having, in this case, 5 wins. So that's 15 points, and still having 19 points, like 4 point plus. That's I think it's insane performance for Biquet.
Yeah, very, very good performances from him so far. Definitely the favorite for that first spot, but it is just 2 points ahead of Xander, and anything can go wrong very quickly. As we seen, he got away with one in Maryland there, but earlier on, I think it was in week 3, he did get a loss. So he is human; he can lose. And yeah, we'll see how he does in the rest of the season. And most importantly, right now, weeks 7 to 9.
Yeah, on week 7, it's a world map, and Morica faces against Sepp Kirst, and it's very interesting because it's 3rd place right now. Morica stands on 3rd place, and Sepp Kirst is on 5th place, and it's the derby between the German players, and I really expect fireworks here, like in the last match, the Bundesliga between Dortmund and Bayern. Also here, like one of them, I expect to get a win here, and with that, probably gets into the top 3. Or in the case of Morica, he's already at the top 3, but Sepp Kirst might get into the top 3. And yeah, both players are performing really well. And Morica is a newcomer. Sepp Kirst already showed in the previous season, and also in other leagues and divisions, that yeah, he has a talent to get a great score. Okay, so for week 8, I went again with Sepp Kirst, but now against Danny Blondes, and it's a really important matchup, especially maybe for Sepp Kirst, because as we see, Danny Blondes is in the middle of the table. But if he gets a win in week 7, then in week 8 also, with a second win, 2 in a row, Danny Bonds might be able to get close to the top 3. So I think he's not out of the picture in the promotion playoff fight. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Two great players, I think, with like similar skill set in moving aspects. So yeah, and also the map is like a neutral ground because both of them are European players. So yeah, we'll see. And lastly, in week 9, traveling to Eswatini. Again, it's kind of weird that I'm always picking Sapkirs because probably from all of the Division 4 and 5 players, in my eyes, Sapkirs will have the hardest 3 weeks to come because in week 9 he will face Biket, the division leader. And yeah, in Eswatini, I'm expecting maybe a draw, as you said earlier. Eswatini is region guessable. There are some clues here and there that players might be able to use to narrow down the region. And yeah, but pinpointing won't be that easy, I think. So maybe 1 or 2 hard remote runs decide this match between them, and also maybe help Wicket to gain a bigger advantage and from Sander and Morika. And for Sapkirs, yeah, he can get close to Wicket with a win here. So yeah, good luck to Sapkirs because I wouldn't want to be in his shoes in this case with 3 absolutely difficult weeks to come. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely a rough draw for him there in these 3 weeks. But I mean, afterwards he'll have that done with. Maybe there's some easier matchups for him to come in week 10 and 11. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, Alfie and Luton in week 10 and 11, currently 9th and 11th. So maybe if he can just get through those 3 weeks with some great results, he's got a pretty good chance looking for those promotion spots. My picks for week 7 to 9 are starting us off with Antoine Pilot against Seppo, currently 8th against 12th in the table. Of course, Seppo, as we've mentioned before, not picked up any points yet. But on a world map, there's always a chance, and Antoine Pilot has had some great performances so far, been getting a bit unlucky maybe with matchups here and there. Is also one of those players, one of those 6 higher than those 140,000 points in terms of total score. So he'll have to see if he can maybe turn around his luck a little bit and start making some ways away from the relegation zone at least. And the same goes for Luta in week 8, North America, who has an even higher total score than Antoine Pilot. The 4th highest, but just 260 points almost lower than Piquet, who has the 2nd highest score. So very, very close division in general. He's got a tough task ahead of him, though, with Xander as his opponent in North America. Obviously, Xander, American himself, will definitely put up a very good fight there, making it as difficult as possible for Luton to get some points on the board there. And to finish us off, we have week 9 in Eswatini, where I picked Morik against Xander, 2nd against 3rd in the table. Of course, going to be a great game to watch and will be pretty decisive as well. Especially if you look at the small gap starting to form between those two, already 3 points. So if Xander manages to put that win on the board there as well, then we're kind of looking at almost like a 2-horse race between Biquet and Xander for that automatic promotion spot, with the rest of the table scrambling to get into that 3rd spot and get a last chance at that promotion as well. And yeah, that'll do it for Division 4. And we'll go straight into not quite your territory. Your territory is Division 1, but closer to your territory. And we'll move to Division 3 and their results from weeks 4 to 6. So we'll start off with you talking about Ecuador, and what kind of match did you choose for that?
So my pick for week 4 was the match between, two of my fellow comrades from the French server. It was a match between Tante and Pastel Caché, which are two prominent players from League One I got to know quite well. Hence, I expected them to perform quite well in this map, and well, they got quite a tough seed to play with. Lots of rural locations, and if I recall correctly, there were quite difficult locations to pinpoint since they were quite far from basically everything. Like at least there are 2 to 3 rounds in which I got nothing while I was trying to play them by myself. So they got pretty decent at it, since Tante scored the second best score of the division and Pastek finished like fourth. It was like a 24.5k versus 23.4k. So really an interesting match won by Tante, and I think a really highly level encounter. I would be quite curious to know how they managed to get some of the most rural locations. Especially, I think there was one, the round 4 of this map, which was extremely far from anything. You just have to basically look at some basic town called Fixtures.
Mhm.
They found it, and was quite impressed because I clearly didn't at all. So yeah, nice match between two players that are doing so far opposite trajectories in their Division 3, since Tante is really is like second between MrSwissSnow at the moment, and while Bastek is struggling a little bit more, but I think that both have the potential to finish quite high in the overall rankings. That was my pick for week 4. For week 5, the match I chose to keep was the match between Hexalt and Lunacy Echo, since, well, I suppose that I like to know how are US players doing on their own country, even though I don't think that Lunacy Echo is related to Maryland in any sort of anything. But I was really impressed by lots of players since there were lots of 25Ks on this seed. I think that when I played it, I was just unable to find the famous national 219 road on the round 5, which cost me quite basically 5,000 points. But it seems that it wasn't the case for everyone, and lots of people were able to get really strong scores. And it was a double 25k, which was a really nice performance for both players. Not much to add, that Maryland isn't so easy of a state, so I'd like to just underline the fact that there was really some really strong level on that D3 during this week. Do you know how many players did a 25k, by the way? I don't think I have this.
There were 6 players of Division... Wait, 5 players, sorry. Can't count. But 5 players who managed to get a perfect score. Exalt and Lunacy, Close, Tante, and F. Passeur, who all got a 25k. If we include like everyone who played the seeds, there were 13 people who got 25k in total on it.
Yeah, well, really nice numbers indeed. I think that since the week 1 in Ireland, you wouldn't see so many 25Ks in a single seed. But anyway, it's still quite a strong performance for both players. So yeah, to me it was really nice display. And Lunacy and Exalt are both players which are at the moment quite well on the standings and could be able to reach, at the very least, the promotion playoffs. So a nice 3-point draw for both players. And my week 6 pick was the match between MrSwissSnow and Closed 247. Since I didn't know what to expect, but MrSwissSnow made the strongest start of all players of the Division 3, since he basically won all his 5 matches before week 6. And he seems to get quite a tough time with South Korea, as he scored maybe one of the lowest of the Division 3 on this week, as he played something like 1,330k points in total. So quite a tough time, and I think that Closed won his match and gave him his only defeat so far. So it was quite a surprise to me when I noticed that the score of Brasser. But to me, it might be a little bit. It might be interesting in the sense that it could give a little bit of suspense in who will manage to snatch the first place in the end of the season. Since after a rocket start like he did, it was it could have been quite. How do you say? It could have been quite a snowball. Like he would have kept on going and winning matches, and that defeat might be a little bit of might change a few things. So it was quite a surprising result to me, and I'll be curious to see how well will he proceed in the following weeks. And for Closed, it's a good result as well, since he was so far in the middle of the pack, and he's starting to get on the upper half of the standings after this week. So let's just hope for him that he will continue after this really nice result on the South Korea.
Yeah. So for my picks, I will start off with Closed in a matchup against Freckles in Ecuador. And yeah, you mentioned the Ecuador seed wasn't particularly easy. That one round you pointed out in fixtures, which was a round that I did find actually, but purely based off scanning the map for that town, which does show up at a somewhat reasonable zoom level, but you do have to kind of zoom in a bit further. You can region guess somewhat to be more in the central part, but obviously it's still a difficult find, and plenty of people didn't quite manage to do that. But yeah, as you said, there were more difficult rounds in there as well. There was a round near Tosagua, like near the city of Manta, which it was possible to find signs for it, but even then, another round where if you haven't heard of the city before, it can be super difficult to find. And yeah, I picked Closed's game against Freckles, Closed with the best score in Division 3 in that week, only 100 points away from that perfect score. So a fantastic performance by him. And Freckles continuing to struggle in this season. I think at this point, it might have been his fourth loss in a row. Actually not. I think, yeah, he picked up one win in week 3, but he really hasn't been having a great start, and only compounded by that rough loss in Ecuador, getting matched up against the best scorer of the division, of course. Never fun, but yeah, great performance by Closed nonetheless. Then for Maryland, I picked out one of the other 25Ks, F. Brasseur. You mentioned him earlier on in his South Korea match, where he had his first setback of the season. He's a player that I've only really known through the daily challenges on the subreddit, where he kind of plays them fairly consistently, or at least he did so during the time where I also occasionally played them. Putting up pretty good scores, kind of more so a player I believe that is really benefiting from the additional time that is awarded, down in Division 3, because those daily challenges are 5 minutes per round. So I don't know how well he will do if he manages to get promoted, because I also don't think he's too active in any of the other communities that more often host events with shorter time limits. But so far, he's been doing really well in Division 3. And yeah, strong 25K in Maryland to get a win off of Mikpiet. And yeah, being the only person of that week who picks up 4 points, because as we saw Hexalt and Lunacy playing against each other in the 25Ks, and the same story for Closed and Tante. So the only player coming out of that with 4 points is a nice boost for him. And then for South Korea, I picked Exalt against Pastek. Pastek, who had to be reminded of the deadline about 15 minutes prior, and then played the South Korea challenge on his phone in his car.
Typical Pastek. Yeah.
Yep. did all right considering that, but of course, against Exile, that was never gonna be much of a chance of a win there, especially in on like a map as South Korea, where movement is really, really tough and just an incredible struggle. And having to move on your phone, I can't imagine makes it much better. So
Yeah, plus I have to say that Exalt is a really quite known player for his mastering of Asian countries in general on the French community. So I think that that was doubling the challenge.
Yeah. So no chance for Postek to begin with, anyway. But yeah, well, see, Pastek is kind of always a bit of a strange player to me in that sense, where there's some competitions like the Coupe de la Ligue where he just always does insanely well. And then there's some others, certain Reddit League weeks, or even in Liga Inter Commu, I think, where he just doesn't really do too well occasionally. I mean, he's still, respectable scores, but not quite on that level. So I wonder if he's just, sometimes lacking motivation to practice or other stuff like that that makes those differences in performances quite so large.
Well, I would say that according to what I could see on the French server, he's more of a passion player. Like if there is something that motivates him for a reason or another, he will invest tons of time to train and to be really good, to become really good at the country or at the map. And that is what can happen when he gets like direct elimination matches, like you mentioned in the Coupe de la Ligue. And in some other instances that he might play just without much preparation and even to end up on his phone 15 minutes before the deadline. That doesn't surprise me that much. If he wants to commit himself, he will do, and he will perform really nicely. And if he doesn't, well, he'll just perform as usual, and as usual can be quite a high level as well. But sometimes it might just not be enough.
Yeah. So let's take a quick look at that table. And yeah, it is him currently in 10th place with just 6 points after the first 6 games. Small mistake there in the graphic. He has 1 win actually. But yeah, other than that, F. Passeur still, even with that loss in South Korea, leading the division. But it's gotten a lot closer. Tante is surprisingly doing really well this season after he was struggling in his debut season last season, where he needed the relegation playoff match to win against Antoine Pilot and stay in this division. He's doing a lot better this season, highest total score as well, so pretty good job from him so far. Lunacy in 3rd place, also kind of expected to be up there. Mick Piet doing really well as well, also having just been promoted through the promotion playoff game, I believe, last season. And yeah, just overall, it's a really strong division. I feel like in recent times, in recent seasons, sometimes Division 3 was kind of a bit on the weaker side, where it was kind of bottlenecked a bit down below, where not many people got relegated, and sometimes we had red cards and stuff like that, and not too many people of the strong upper side of Division 4 came up. So with a few more promotion spots on offer last season out of Division 4, I think Division 3 has really gained in strength, and I think is now at a level where it actually, is as strong as it should be, being above Division 4. And yeah, apart from that, yeah, just Patriots struggling a bit after his comeback this season. 6 losses out of 6 games. His total score is not awful. He's on the level of Paulinho and Freckles, at least. So there may still be points to come throughout the course of the season, but obviously already 6 points behind Pastek. So any shot at getting at least to the relegation playoff is going to require either a big step up in performance or quite a bit of luck, I believe.
I would just add that, in my opinion, I think that more players than on the last season are trying to getting really trained and focused for the weeks of Reddit League specifically. Like you were speaking about Tante and Mick Piet earlier. I'm on the same team as both of them, so I know them quite well, and I noticed that both of them seem to really try to practice more than what they did on the last season, and I think showed a bit on their first week results. So it might be quite a general trend, but I feel like there are more players trying to really prepare their matches, and the players that just do play without much preparation, or I think might be less. There just might be less players doing that. It shows on the final results. Seem like as well someone like Patriots, like you mentioned, which left the Reddit League a few seasons ago, if I recall correctly, and then came back. He might have a good level, decent enough to perform well in the D3 of season 3 or season 4, but it might not be enough, totally enough to perform well in a season 7, for instance.
Yeah, I think just generally players have gotten a lot better over the course of like a year or 2 years ago. There's been a lot more actually like serious competitions being hosted all around the communities. And so players that might have not been too up to date with those and might just be playing Reddit League or might just, play some casual Geoguessr on the side might be falling a bit behind in terms of skill level. So
exactly,
yeah.
there are lots of knowledge have been discovered in the last year, for instance, and if you can keep up with all the new content that has been released, all the new guides and the tutorials about several countries, then you'll be able to step up a lot and to perform well consistently. If you did not, you might be in trouble when you're playing against players which get their knowledge up to date.
Yeah.
So I think that might cause some difference between that new generation of players.
Yeah, definitely. And I think generally, like, no one can really keep up with everything that is being discovered at all times. But of course, there'll be some players who, might just pick out some pieces of information and learn them when they're relevant to them. And suddenly, their overall level becomes much better. And of course, there's always that discussion that comes about when there's a Reddit League week and there's something to learn, like it was, for example, the Maryland counties or South Korean phone area codes or something. And afterwards, you always get people who are like, well, I learned them and I didn't get to use them in the seed at all. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, true. Maybe you didn't get to use them in the seed, but you still learned them. And, you might get to use that knowledge in the future. Like since South Korea, that's been like 2 weeks ago or so at this stage. I've got to use South Korean phone numbers, I think like twice at least in seeds. So, and I don't play very much Geoguessr, to be honest. So that's a decent amount of times I've got to use that. And so you can keep using those pieces of knowledge even if you didn't really get to use them in Reddit League. That is, of course, if you manage to hold on to that information. I imagine in 2 weeks I will have forgotten most of the Maryland counties, but who knows?
That's what you think until the time you come across one of them and you just realize that you knew it all the time along.
Oh, I've heard of that county, and then it turns out it's a completely different county somewhere in Wisconsin that just has the same name.
Yeah, well, U.S. counties might not be the most reliable source of information. Since there are so many homonyms, yes. But like for the area codes or the roads and road numbering systems, all that stuff, it might prove useful, and you might be surprised by what you manage to keep in mind, even without thinking about it.
Yeah, and once you've learned it once, learning it again will just become easy as well. Even if you do forget a couple of them, if you just look through it again, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that, and it'll go over much quicker. But yeah, let's talk about the future weeks of Division 3 then. And yeah, whose matchups did you pick out for week 7 to 9?
So the week 7 will be a worldwide map, which is to me quite a world map with some attention given to quite remote locations, strange locations, or simply speaking, like locations you are not used to have in a usual world map. So for this map, the match I would like to see would be the match between MrSwissSnow and Bastel. Yes, that's what I wrote, because I know that Bastel is quite an excellent player, all-rounded, and performs very well on basically any kind of map at any time. So I think that since he maps a lot of locations for different competitions, he might be aware of all these kind of remote, unknown locations. While MrSwissSnow, like we told before, is a really strong player overall. So he might prove as well to get to have enough knowledge to manage to replace all these rural or these remote locations. So to me, it will be quite a high-scoring match that I can expect between both players. I wouldn't try to guess who might win between these two, but I think that both might score quite close one from another, maybe in the drawing range. So we'll see. But I think that it will be a fairly interesting match. Week 8 will be on the North American map. So for this map, I noticed that there will be 2 full French encounters between Tantei and Nakiro and Mikpiet versus Pasta Caché. So both encounters are interestingly since I know that in both of these encounters, both players have roughly the same level to me. So once again, we might see some balanced results. We'll see if it will be in the drawing range or if one player gets an information that the other won't have. North America is quite a difficult map overall, since you need to get really quickly on the state-specific clues for US and or on the road-specific clues for Canada, for instance. And Mexico, you need to get to know lots of fun codes, for instance. So you might get high scores, but you might get as well some close results if both players manage to find the same information and to exploit them. And I think that all these players are able to train if they want to, obviously, like we told before. So we'll see if their training will pay off and if it will lead to exciting encounters. So for week 8, like Tantei versus Nakiro and Mikpiet versus Pasta Caché will be 2 matches to check. And for the week 9, I chose for the Eswatini map, I chose to pick the match between Lunasieko and Nakiro, since Lunasieko is really well on the standings, and I think, I'm not sure if he already had to prepare for an Eswatini map so far, but if I recall correctly, I think he did, even though I don't recall when. But Eswatini map can be quite difficult to play, since it's a quite small country, not that well indicated. Like there are lots of town names that you won't find easily on the map. So it might prove to be quite difficult, but I think that as long as both players, which are working quite good before each week of competition, if both players manage to take the necessary time to prepare this Eswatini map, it should lead to quite high scores from both sides. So I will be interested in looking what will come out after this match.
Yeah, definitely. My side of the picks, I think generally those 3 maps are very interesting as well. And for the worldwide map, I picked Tantei against Lunacy. Second against third in the standings currently. So definitely a match that will be pretty decisive, looking towards the end of the season and maybe towards those promotion playoff spots. And I think Lunacy is just in general a very, very strong player, as he's shown, for example, in the Coupe de la Ligue, where he's going to be playing in the final, I think, today even.
Precisely, yes.
So that's going to be a fun thing. He's occasionally, most of the time, busy somewhere, and so the one thing holding him back, I suppose, is always, is he gonna be currently in a African country with like 2 megabyte download speed or something like that? Or is he actually going to be somewhere where he's got decent internet? But yeah, I think he's a very strong player, and we'll see if Tante can challenge him to put up a good performance on that as well. Yeah, as you said, the worldwide map is interesting. It's got a lot of weird locations in it that you wouldn't really expect normally of like a standard world map. So definitely like knowing your odd places here or there could be a benefit, because I feel like if you just go into a random worldwide map, you can't really practice for that much. But I feel like this one might be a map that you can at least get more comfortable with the location spread and kind of look at it and be like, okay, I've got this location. Where could that be just purely based off the map maker's mind, and where would they have put a location like that?
Yeah, if you have an idea of the country you're in, then just pick the only location, or the only zone where you think no one is ever going to put me there, except in this map. Well, yeah, like always the small islands in Japan, the small the dependencies, any kind of things that the Ceuta, Melilla, all these kind of stuff that you don't expect to find in a basic map, or only in a super small fraction. There will be there always.
Yeah, any weird exclave or enclave, that's where you are. But yeah, moving on, week 8, North America. I've stuck with Lunacy for my pick, and I'm going for his matchup against Closed. Lunacy, of course, American himself, will have a little bit of an advantage, at least in the US. The map itself, I think, as far as I remember, is completely balanced between Canada, Mexico, and the US in terms of the same number of locations. And it has a decent number of locations as well in Guatemala, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. Of course, Puerto Rico part of the US, but I kind of like to mention it as its own thing. So it should provide a decent amount of diversity.
Isn't Guatemala part of Central American zone in theory?
There is like it depends a bit on your definition of continents, but technically there is no Central America. There's only North and South America, which is like the definition this continent map is going off as well.
Okay.
Which is why it includes stuff like, I mean, technically I don't actually remember. Maybe there's a Costa Rica tracker in there as well, because those are technically pinpointable as well. So maybe it could be included. I don't remember.
Good to know. Even though I don't think that we might see much of them.
Yeah, it's obviously if you've got, I think it's 38,000 locations in each of Mexico, US, and Canada. So if there's like 5 in Costa Rica, it probably won't occur. But maybe it's in there. Either way, Lunacy against Closed, I think, is another pretty interesting game. Closed in 5th place currently in the standings, and has been on a bit of an upward trend recently. Only 1 loss as well in the season so far, 3 draws. I definitely think that is a matchup that could end up being very close, potentially even towards like a perfect draw or something like that. Yeah, correct. And for week 9, Eswatini, I've got to say, Eswatini to me is kind of like a complete like blank slate. I don't really know much about it. I've never, like pretty much never had to play it on its own. So I can't even really say too much about it yet. I've not created the seeds yet. I'll do that over the course of the next week. So I'll hopefully know more about it by then. But yeah, it's a fairly small country, but as you said, not super well signed, although I think better signed than Lesotho.
Not that much. In fact, you will see some signs, but the road numbers that are attached to them are not shown on the map. And they are pointing towards super small settlements that you won't notice either. So in that sense, I would say that the signs aren't very useful.
Okay, but they're at least there. At least they're there to distract you. But yeah,
maybe with zooming enough, you might find these settlements. But I found it to be quite pretty difficult, but we'll see.
Yeah, for that I picked Pastek against Pastetli, currently 9th and 10th in the standings as well. So very important matchup for both of them to kind of avoid that relegation danger, and also will be pretty heavily dependent on both of their motivation and available time. Because, Pastetli has been very busy with schoolwork over the, beginning or first half of the season. And I think, as far as I remember, it's coming to an end, so he should have more time soon. Whether that's already the case for Eswatini or not, I don't know. And Pastek, as we mentioned previously, really motivation dependent, if he really wants to practice Eswatini or not. But yeah, I think just purely based on that, it could be a pretty interesting match to see how it turns out. And with that, after 30 minutes, we're getting longer and longer for every division.
Oops.
We'll move over to Division 2. I mean, at least we've talked about the maps now and stuff like that, so maybe we can make it a little bit shorter. But yeah, your picks for weeks 4 to 6 for Division 2.
Yep, so I will start with the Ecuador for Division 2 and the match between Diesel and Steel the Snake. So far, I'm quite surprised by how Diesel has performed during this season. As to me, he's a super strong player. He performed really well and consistently in basically every competitions I've seen him in so far. So I'm quite so it's quite a surprise for me to see him in the 11th position, especially since his score is aren't quite bad at all. He ranks pretty good on total score overall, but once again he got in trouble in that Ecuador map, losing by some margin against Steel the Snake, which performed quite well on that seed. I think that on this seed, Diesel misses two locations by a huge margin, setting himself twice on the Ibarra city, which is on the very north of the Ecuador, while both round 4 and 5 are round 5 was the right round, but he put himself on the twice on the city, and once it was right, once it was fully south. So he lost quite some points in this match, and once more, I think that he might be a bit unlucky on this beginning, and I hope that he'll be able to bounce back, since to me he was one of the favorite contenders to climb up to Division 1 at the beginning of the season. And so the fact that he's in 11th doesn't seem to fit his level to me. So on the Maryland week, the match I chose to comment was the match between Fungus, the Fungus Among Us, between and Flipster 22. Sorry, Flipster managed to 25k his seed, and he was the only player of the division to do so, if I recall correctly. So yes, he's by the way the only player to getting 2 perfect scores so far on the Division 2, which is quite an amazing performance to me, especially given I think that the Ireland seed wasn't that easy as well for Division 2. So yes, a very strong performance for him. And Flipster is still really quite well on the standings, since he's 3rd and Fungus is 1st. So even though Fungus took some advantage, took some lead, as Ottawa is behind, like 2 points behind, and Flipster is 5 points behind Fungus. I think that there might still be some room for Flipster to manage to catch at least the 2nd place at the end of the season, since Flipster is a super strong and consistent player overall. So I think that we're not done with Flipster yet, even with that defeat and that 4-point result for Fungus. On the South Korean week, the Division 2 seed was quite funny, since there were quite yes, there were 3 locations on the Jeju Island, on the very south of the country, which was extremely rare. I don't think I've ever witnessed that in a South Korea map. So very high scores overall, since the Jeju Island is quite recognizable. There are road numbers that show you quite well where you are. So overall, lots of 20, 23, 24K scores. And well, my pick was initially to the match between Toto Radio and RT Lewis 123. However, since RT Lewis did not play his map on time, I think he was yellow carded for that. So it might lose a bit of its interest. But to me, since I know both players, I played both on duels and in several other modes. I know that they are both high-level players, and I was expecting some nice scores in the match. Well, it turns out that in the end, we didn't have quite the match that I expected, but it was still quite interesting to see them play on this map, and I think that they performed quite correctly overall, even though they are not in the best scores of the map by a margin.
Yeah, and my picks are for Ecuador. I picked Ordboka against Ottawa, specifically because Ottawa has had a very, very good debut in Reddit League in these first 6 weeks. He's won 4 games, drawn 1, and that game against Ordboka was the only game where he hasn't been able to pick up any points. Ordboka with a very, very strong performance. He's definitely his strongest out of the season so far. He himself is struggling a bit in this season. But coming in with, I believe, the top score of the division, yes. Just performing really well on that Ecuador map and pulling out a probably unexpected win against one of the players who are looking to be real contenders for the automatic promotion spots. So just really well done from him there. In Maryland, I picked out Toto Radio against Guelo Wizard. Guelo, kind of a surprisingly good season for him so far, with Maryland kind of being the one map where he maybe surprisingly struggled a bit. You know, you'd think, as you said before, Maryland is probably not the biggest US-American advantage for it being like a home country. But you'd imagine it's at least like a slight advantage. And obviously Toto Radio as well, very, very strong player. So he managed to pull out that win there against Guelo Wizard. Guelo is still getting a point, at least for, being in the top half. But yeah, very, very close game for them both in a not particularly easy Maryland seed. And then for week 6, I picked out Guelo Wizard again for an incredible perfect score. The map, as you said, 3 locations in Jeju, that helps with making it more 25Kable. But still,
I wouldn't say 25Kable. I would say that the overall score would be better, but I still got a tough time pinpointing these Jeju rounds. So yes, getting a 25K on South Korea is quite an achievement.
Yeah, definitely. His second 25K of his Reddit League career, his first coming in season 5. So yeah, just a really, really good performance over Diesel, who's just, not even when he's put up decent scores, just, getting matched up against players who put up better scores, not having the best of times there. But yeah, for Guelo in general, his season has gone really well so far, as you'll see when we look at the table here. He's currently in 4th place, and ever since he got promoted into Division 2 all the way back in Season 2, he got promoted into it in Season 3, so his first season was Season 3 in Division 2. He's pretty much just constantly been fighting against relegation and just to keep himself in the division somehow, by finishing 10th, 8th, 10th, and 8th again over the course of the last 4 seasons. This season, he's really stepped it up with some fantastic performances. For example, that South Korea 25K. And it's not just a matter of, him finally getting some lucky matchups or something and getting to the top with a, less than impressive total score. Like, his total score is still up there, still like just below some of the players who are around him, like 3,000 points below Ottawa or Toto Radio. But that's still very much in the wheelhouse and definitely beating out players like Steel the Snake, Cameron, Ordwalker, Diesel, and the like. So definitely a deserved position for him at the moment. And yeah, I'm excited to see if he can keep that going. He's only 4 points ahead of 10th, but yeah, we'll see if he can keep that up. At the top, we've got Fungus and Ottawa, kind of with a little bit of a gap behind them, the two newcomers there. And yeah, at the bottom, Diesel, surprisingly, as you said as well, not quite able to step up to that Division 2. I don't know if he's just got less time to practice or what exactly is the case for him at the moment. But 5 points out of the first 6 games is surely a bit of a disappointing start for him. And WTF, on the other hand, was already saying at the end of last season how he doesn't really feel like he belongs in Division 2 based off his own level. And he basically stayed in there because 2 players got red carded. So there was no one getting relegated. And it kind of shows here. I don't know if it's a mixture as well of him just not quite having the motivation, maybe, where he's just like, well, I know I don't really belong in here. So I don't even really want to practice, where, there's just kind of like 2 directions you can take in that position, where one direction is you say to yourself, well, I'm going to prove that I do actually belong in here. I'm going to practice more. I'm going to really give it my all. Or the other direction is kind of resignation and kind of saying, okay, well, whatever, I'll just play this and hopefully get relegated, whatever. And next season, I'm going to have more fun in Division 3 or something like that. But
yeah, I think that when you're in last place and you're starting to lose more and more matches, you're losing your motivation as well. Like you're saying that it's getting more and more difficult to being able to hold your ground and to win matches. You're starting to check the math and to realize that it's more and more difficult to be able not to be automatically relegated. I think that might lead to at some point you might just start to give up a little bit, and the end of the season might be quite long at this moment. I was discussing a bit with Toto Radio who relegated from Division 1, and he was in this kind of mood at some point, since he was basically struggling every week and was getting loss after loss after loss, and yeah, at some point you might just give up, and it's all these loss piling up are really prove really difficult to overcome. If you want to really to commit yourself, you want to do it when you think that it might be rewarding you with something. When you think that you're on the verge of relegation and it's basically the situation is basically impossible to solve, well, it's not really pushing you towards practicing more.
Yeah, definitely. And Reddit League can be a real test of character sometimes, just getting a look into these people's personalities and how they react to losses, to wins, and generally to a lot of different situations, which is always quite interesting to see. But let's move on to the future and the games for weeks 7 to 9 for Division 2. And yes, I can see that you've picked out some interesting matches.
Well, I think that for the week 7, the worldwide map, the Ottawa versus Flipster 22 was a match that I think you would have picked as well, since second player versus third, it's always interesting to see. Plus, I think Ottawa is a really decent player on any map, basically. He's super strong in France, but he's extremely strong in other modes as well. And I think that in a world map, he could get all these references. He would need to get to take the better of Flipster in such a map. But Flipster as well is consistently making super strong score in basically any map. Last season, I was looking at him on the top of the rankings in basically 2 maps out of 3 in every division seed. So I think that he has as well all the references and the capacity to score big in the worldwide map. So anyway, on the standing point of view or on the score point of view, I think that it will be a great match to see. For the Northern American seed, the match that I picked is Diesel versus Fungus Among Us. I picked my Northern American player, and I picked Diesel, which is as well a player which can do basically a 25k on any map at any time, provided he takes enough time to prepare. So I think that once more this match can be really close, and I hope to see a result which might a bit put Diesel back on track. And since I really think that he deserves more than the 5 points that he has at the moment, so I hope for him that he will manage to score at least a few good results on the second half of the season. Maybe on the Northern American map, maybe not. But I think that on this map, he will get a tough opponent, but it will be a great match to see. On the week 9 on the Eswatini map, I choose the match between Geoguessr and Flipster 22 again, since they are currently tied on the rankings. Flipster being ahead since he has an overall score, but that might not matter at the moment, and that will only matter after the last week. But since I think that both players have shown great things so far, so once more, on a difficult country such as Eswatini, I wonder how well they will be prepared for the map. But depending on how much they committed for Eswatini, it might be a really good match to witness as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being very close. And my picks for those 3 weeks are the game against WTF against RT Lewis to start with in week 7, because RT Lewis not playing his last game in week 6. We'll kind of get to see if that was just a one-off. Maybe he just didn't remember, just forgot to play.
He played the game afterwards. I noticed that he played his seed, even though he didn't score quite well. But I think that he really just got well. I don't think that he will hit. I think that he will play the next ones.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see if he'll play them on time. But yeah. But because of that, he's dropped down the ranking a bit. I think he had a pretty good start. Also, just generally a very good preseason. And has kind of, differently to the other two newcomers in Otto and Fungus, been a bit more of a mid-table player. And WTF, as we've established before, just kind of been struggling the whole season. So that could potentially be some free points for WTF if RT Lewis doesn't play. But of course, we always hope that everyone does play their game. We want as little red cards as possible, just for the fairness for everyone. And yeah, for week 8, I've chosen Ottawa against Cameron. As we've mentioned previously, Ottawa, a very, very strong player. But at the same time, Cameron is also very good and will maybe have a little bit of an advantage with North America being the map to play. Is currently, I think, sitting around lower mid-table. But with that map, he could take some surprise, could get to like a surprise upset maybe and take some points off of one of the promotion contenders, and maybe move himself back into the question on perhaps getting towards those promotion playoff spots, as everything in the middle of Division 2 is very close together.
There are only 4 points between 3rd and 10th, so a good result might prove really helpful in getting close to these promotion spots.
Yeah. And then for week 9, for Eswatini, I've just chosen Fungus against Samo. Just generally, Fungus, very, very strong player. Samo as well. We'll see who puts in more time in practicing Eswatini, as I really do believe that's what it'll come down to. Potentially also slightly based off of the seed they get. We don't know what that's going to be like yet. I mean, if it's like the South Korea seed of the 3 Jeju locations, who knows how much practice is going to pay off there. If we just have 5 locations in Mbabane, then, it doesn't matter if you've practiced landscape guessing. But yeah, we'll just hope for an interesting seed there to really show us the best of what those two can offer.
Would you keep a seed with 5 locations in Bambane?
I'm not sure. It depends. I think I've had a seed before that had like 3 locations. I mean, the Jeju, obviously. I'm calling it the Jeju seed now. The South Korea seed of Division 2 had 3 locations on Jeju, but I think they were, far enough apart from each other and different enough so that it made sense to keep them. If it's just like 5 locations around like the city center of Mbabane, then probably not. But if they're like spread out through the city and, and just like maybe one of them is, city center, maybe one of them is like rural outskirts, maybe one of them is like roughly in the middle, one of them's on the highway. And so potentially it just depends on how interesting I think it could be, even if it is on the easier side. I'd probably have to check as well if it's actually, just based off the scoring, if you can, if just no matter what you do on the seat, if you just put it in Babane 5 times, if you just draw anyway. But I think Eswatini is small enough for that not to happen. So yeah, we'll see. But I don't think it's gonna happen.
Well, I hope so. It would be quite boring, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I actually am not sure it would be boring. I don't think Mbabane is super easy to 5K.
Yeah, it might be like Uganda seeds with 5 Kampala rounds. Yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
Exactly. But obviously, it'd be another instance of the players complaining that they didn't get to use any of what they've practiced. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And yeah, that will leave us with Division 1, last division for the day. Yeah, present us your picks for the previous 3 weeks.
Yep, so my first pick will be a match that you will know quite well, since it is your match versus Bassman for the Ecuador. It was quite an interesting matchup to me, since I think that you said it in one of another Reddit League show, but I think that it might be one of the most frequent matches on the Reddit League so far.
We've basically been in the same division every time since season 2, so we've played each other 6 times, which I think is equal to the amount of maps I've played against Verdok, because I've played Verdok in 1 promotion playoff and 1 relegation playoff as well. So actually, I think I might have even played Verdok 7 times now. So purely like 7 maps, because one of the relegation playoff was obviously a best of 3. So I've got the most maps against Verdok, but I think purely most matches is against Baseman. Yeah.
I see. Well, it proved to be quite a tough match between 2 really strong competitors. So the Ecuador seed for Division 1 was a bit I didn't have so many information to deal with during several points. I think, like notably, the most difficult rounds were the round 3, where you were basically in front of a huge city, but you didn't have enough time to check what was the city name, because you wouldn't come in front of any sign for 3 minutes. So you made a Quito Plank. I did so too. Bassman did a Nambato Plank on this one and lost several points, but he regained them back when he managed to find a Santa Clara location on round 5, from which I was super far, and you seemed to get a hard time with it too.
Yeah, that one was really annoying. On the Quito round, actually, I was after about maybe like a minute of moving. If you just looked back, there was a big, like a huge advertising board or something that mentioned Quito on it. But you kind of had to, because it was like you went downhill pretty much the whole time. And the sign was kind of, you didn't see it while going downhill. So you had to look uphill to the left, where there was like a dead end, to see the sign. And if you just kept pressing forward, clicking forward to go downhill, you just never saw that sign.
Yep, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and in round 5, that was super annoying for me, because I don't remember if it was west or east, but I went one direction initially for like 2 minutes, and then went back to the start. I think in that I just found like Santa Lucia and nothing else, like just a mention of the town name. And I went back to the start and went the same direction for like half a minute before I realized, wait, there's something's not right. Turned back around, went back to the start again, went the right way, but only for like 10 seconds before time ran out. And going the right way, after like 20 seconds, there was a sign that mentioned Pastaza, which is a province in Ecuador.
I saw that you posted the name, the sign, but this sign was really small. To be fair, I think that it might easily have been overlooked if you were in a rush or simply just didn't pay attention. But okay. But I know at least that was something, because the Santa Clara on itself was really not that big of an information.
Yeah.
But great match anyway, and you both got you scored quite well for the rest of the seeds, since I think that the best score was stuck with 24.7k, but Bassman had the second best score with 22.7k, so it wasn't an easy seed by any means. So my week 5 pick was my own match versus Shumi Oboroso, since I think you already spoke a few times about how Shumi was able to perform extremely well in seeds where you wouldn't expect him to do so, and in some others that he might end up quite low on the scoreboard. And as he basically made the best score of the seed, I can only approve you, since he didn't have the greatest of the starts, as he lost. I think he lost two matches on the 3. I don't recall precisely what was his score after the first 3 weeks, but he wasn't quite well on the standings, and he did a really great performance on this map. I only missed one round, and that was enough to lose the match with the third best score. So I'm a bit salty about that, but no big deal. It's usual Reddit League. An interesting Maryland seed. I think that it proved to be quite difficult for several players of the D1, with the score which were quite lower than what we saw on D2 and D3. And for the South Korean map, the match I highlighted was Rihanna versus Barry Fishy Bear, since I think that the South Korea map is basically the only reason why Rihanna decided to sign up on the Reddit League for this season. It's her favorite country. She reads Hangul extremely well, fluently. She knows lots of stuff about South Korea in general, Geoguessr related and otherwise. So, in my opinion, this was a straight up road for 25k from Rihanna, since she managed to 25k lots of other seeds this week, and I thought that it would be a loss for Barry. And it turned out that Barry managed to play an incredibly nice, he dropped 9 points on the whole seed, while I think that these locations were, for at least 2 of them, really, really difficult to pinpoint. I still I'm still speechless to describe how did he manage to get that 5th round in particular, which was really extremely difficult to get. Like, you had to glitch twice in order to get close to information stating that you were near a crossing between Expressway 20 and National Road 17, and good luck with that. But it was really a difficult seed, I think, for precision. So really, congrats to Barry for this win. Like, he 5k'd 4 out of the 5 locations, and the 5th round he dropped 9 points. Rihanna managed to 5k 4 out of the 5 locations, and dropped some points on a round in which all the signs on the big roads stated that the road 1030 was crossing the road 56. But on the map, it only showed as the road 58. So huge bummer, and it was really difficult to play that correctly. But Barry did 5K on this one, and Rihanna did not, and that was game.
Yeah,
So really an interesting seed.
that round was funny, that second round, because I was, well, I think I found 3 different road numbers that just all didn't exist. And I got like one junction away purely based on, well, it's a couple of junctions, but fairly close together, like 100 meters or so. Pure, well, 400 actually, purely based on road direction and kind of knowing, okay, it's somewhere in this area, it's gotta be. No clue where exactly, but this road kind of matches, so let's go here. So yeah, that was a really difficult round to have any confidence at all in your guess, because it was just so contradictive in terms of the information you got and what you saw on the map. But yeah, super interesting game there between the two of them. Unfortunate for Anna, who's had a bit of bad luck so far in her matchups and who she played against. And of course, as well, unfortunate after pretty much signing up for South Korea to be up against Barry, who just pulls out something like that in that week. Yeah, I mean, slight mistake by her in that second round. I think that was one of only 2 rounds in all, like 6 seeds in total, that she didn't 5K. So that's just unfortunate
that's
that
really bad luck.
that it happened in a round in her own seed, and also in a round that I think wasn't, like, it was confusing for sure, but not super difficult per se. It was just more so trying to judge like which information is actually useful to you and which isn't.
Yeah, to me, the round 5 was really the most difficult of them all, and she managed to the 5K on it. But basically, Rihanna, yeah, if you look at the overall score after the 6 weeks, she ranks like 4th or 5th in the total score. 4th. So yeah, when you're 4th in total score and you end up 11th in the standings, that's quite some bad luck. So I hope that she'll manage to get some crucial wins in the next weeks that will set her back to the level that her score indicates.
Yeah, definitely. Although she is only 3 points behind 4th, so there's not a huge difference in the table there.
Scores
anyway.
Are quite stacked here as well.
Yeah. So my picks for those 3 previous weeks were for Ecuador, Shumi against Pluki, and you mentioned the scores of Shumi beforehand, and yeah, even in Ecuador against Pluki, another great performance from him. As you said, not the best start. He had picked up 1 point after the first 3 weeks, and since then he's kind of pulled it back a bit. He had the 3rd highest score there in that Ecuador seed, and as you mentioned it before, I believe the highest score in that Maryland seed. So he's really come back from the rough start, and Pluki just kind of getting a bit unfortunate there. I believe also the 7th highest score, if I'm not miscounting, but he was he was definitely fairly close to a bonus point and just missing out on that by a couple 100 points. And then Maryland, a very, very close game between Verdok and Pav. Just ending up in a draw there, the only draw of the division, with actually fairly low scoring. There were only, I believe, 2 people other than those 2 who had scores worse than them. So they both pick up 1 point for that, and I guess they'll have to be happy with that. Their opponent also didn't do too well, to at least give them 1 point each. And then South Korea, I just picked Baseman against Renata. Renata had a fairly good start to the season, is still sitting in 5th place, so still doing pretty well. And Baseman had, a decent start to the season as well, not the best, but with that win against Renata, it just, again, pushed the table so much closer together. Just generally pretty good performance from Baseman there. I think just mid-table, and Renata really struggling with South Korea's 2nd lowest score of the division and not quite managing to keep her run going. But as we look at the table, it's still just everything is so close together in here, mostly. Emily is a bit, behind, struggling. But apart from that, like, just 7 points between first and 11th, just 3 points between fourth and 11th. So I think from this point on, we're just past halfway. I think almost anything can happen here. It's totally realistic for Anna to still make it to the top 4 and into the semifinals, and still potentially become champion of the season. Of course, Barry, Pav, and you having a little bit of a lead, at least 2 points to me down in fourth. But yeah, still not enough of an advantage to lean back at all. And yeah, should make for some good weeks in the second half of the season.
Yep, I think that at the moment the differences, the score differences are quite low. So with one defeat, you can end up back in the middle of the pack and having to battle back to get up. So it will be interesting to witness in the following weeks. For the worldwide seed for week 7, I picked the match between Stock and versus Pav. Since Pav sat at the second place of the Geoguessr world rankings for quite a while, so I think that he's quite used to all the weird trackers of the world map. In that sense, I saw Stock performing very strongly as well in this kind of mode. Since I did not saw much else of both of them, I think that they might still be quite efficient in this kind of map, but I don't know precisely how well they do. But from what I saw from Pav and from Stock, I think that it might lead to high scores from both players. We'll see what it does. On the week 8, I picked up the Northern American players for their respective matches, which are Barry versus Stock and Pav versus Shumi Oversaw. So I think that Barry has the potential to score very big once again on his home continent. We'll see how he does on Canada and on Mexico if these countries appear during the seed. For Pav, I think that he might. He doesn't might. He is the favorite of this match against Shumi, but Shumi showed some really strong performances in the last weeks. So I hope that he will manage to get a good score from his side as well. That will be 2 interesting matches to check. And on the week 9, I think that I once again choose to pick one of my matches because I will be playing Rihanna, and Rihanna actually trained Eswatini for her Coupe de la Ligue seeds. And I think that if I recall correctly, she holds the best time for 25k on Eswatini on the map that he chose to practice. When you click on the intersection Geoguessr Eswatini map, you will see her name on first position with a 25k in 3 minutes and 49 seconds. I might not be the favorite of this match, since I basically never played this map at all. So it might prove to be a tough match for me, but I think that for a Geoguessr point of view, it will be interesting to see how well will she do on this country that she already trained and in which she already performed quite well. She did 25Ks during her practice, but she also managed to 25K the seed on a 3-minute seed generated for the Coupe de la Ligue. So she will not flinch with the pressure. So I think that we're about to see a great performance from her, and I hope to be able to match her as well.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting match as well. Just to mention about your week 7 game between Stock and Pav. Pav is a person who really likes, apparently, just playing random standard Geoguessr world map. So I think based off that, the worldwide map is definitely a map that could play into his favor. That I reckon he could be very strong on, because the standard world map does have a lot of locations that fall into line with that kind of, just random somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you know.
Yeah, stuff that you wouldn't find in mapped
Yes,
Geoguessr, but
exactly.
like a good old Midway Adderall, China trackers and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically locations you will be able to find on the worldwide map, but you will almost never find on anywhere else.
Yes.
Where a pro player would have a pro player will never map such locations, but on this map you will find them. So that's why I thought that both him and Stock are good regular players of a world map from Geoguessr, since they used it for a long time in duels. Since both of them played lots of duels, I think that they might be aware of some of these trackers and weird locations.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting match to look forward to. My picks, I picked your match against Bastel for week 7. Your match against Verdok for week 7. You're not playing yourself, no.
Well, at least I would have a draw guaranteed.
Yep.
3 points.
Yeah, I think that's just a very interesting match. Verdok always incredibly good on just general world maps and has shown that time and time again. And yeah, you as well, of course, just kind of pretty good at everything consistently. And I just think that could be a very, very interesting game. Of course, Verdok a bit further down in the table, you're a bit higher up. But again, could also be just a game that comes down to one round, maybe that's a bit out of one of the players' comfort zones, and could potentially lead to a bit of a upset purely looking at the table. But yeah, I think could be super close. Then in week 8, I've chosen Anna against Pluki for the North America seed. Anna as well, just very, very good in general at pretty much everything. And the same kind of goes for Pluki, although Anna obviously more on the speedrunning side. So I think if there's some locations that she just for some reason can't find, I think Pluki definitely has a chance on a map like North America, because there is just a lot of rural locations that might require some more information than just what you can find within like a few seconds, which is where I believe Anna really excels. If she can get information quickly and then just, can pinpoint very quickly. But in some, rural USA, rural Mexico, rural Canada, frankly, anywhere in North America, it can really take some time to find any information at all. And
if you ever find one.
Yes, exactly. If you happen to choose the right direction, that will provide one little piece of information after 2 minutes 45. So yeah, definitely an interesting game there for sure as well. And both kind of players that at the start of the season definitely were candidates for those top 4 spots. Pluki has been in the semifinals twice before, and Anna, of course, just incredible player. So even as a newcomer, was definitely someone who you could definitely see ending up in those top 4. And both of them are currently outside of them. Pluki in 6th, Anna in 11th, obviously not far away of them. But there are still 5 weeks to play, but at the same time, there's only 5 weeks to play. So kind of, if you're in that position where you need to pick up as many points as possible, that is definitely a game where the losing party out of that game could be in a rough position if they still want to reach those top 4. And in week 9, Eswatini, I went for Basement against Stock as a matchup that I think could be, by the time we get to week 9 as well, a matchup to decide kind of who is just going to be safe out of relegation danger and who might still be playing against those relegation playoffs. I think purely based off skill level, they're both around sort of your maybe 6th to 9th place somewhere in Division 1. So if just things go badly for one of them, they could easily fall back into maybe that 9th spot and have to play a relegation playoff game. I mean, if things go really badly, then even like the 11th spot is still super close. And that is definitely a crucial game against a direct competitor for those places sort of in the mid-table, lower mid-table positions. And with that, I guess we're done for today. So unless you have any last words.
Don't worry, I think I spoke enough.
Okay, well then, thanks everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next show. Until then, bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for inviting. It was a pleasure. Bye. Bye, everyone.